Recently there was a study done in which a statistical analysis was made of Koran and the Old Testament and the New Testament, which made claims that the Bible was more violent than the Koran. Well, this struck me as a bit odd because my analysis shows just the opposite. Now the difference you'll see is that my analysis matches the headlines that you read in the morning. First off, this is a part of the school of multiculturalism, which wants to insist that all cultures are equally valid, and if the Quran is violent, then the New Testament must be as violent, and the Old Testament must be as violent as well. Well, let's define violence first off. I define violence as political, physical violence. That is, when Cain kills Abel, this to me is not political violence. Because what I'm interested in is, in the Old Testament, how Jews kill non-Jews, and in the New Testament, how Christians are ordered to kill non-Christians, just as when I measure violence in the Quran, the Sirah, and the Hadith. And you'll notice something, by the way, that I measure more than the Quran, I measure also the Sunnah, the Hadith, and the Sirah. So I'm interested in political violence, and the other thing is I'm interested in actual violence. So let's take a look at what we have here, because you would need to do more than just count words. Let me give you an example. I gave a talk one time at a college which had a lot of Muslims in the crowd, and when I mentioned how violent the Quran was, in particular the Quran of Medina, a student raised his hand and says, well, I've searched on my device here, and the word jihad only occurs this many times in the Quran. I said, I'm not measuring the counting of the word jihad. I'm interested in measuring the actual act of jihad. Let me give you an example, sir. You know as well as I do that in the Quran there's a verse which refers to the sleepiness and tiredness of the warriors. Well, guess what? This is taken from the Battle of Badr. It does not include the word jihad, but virtually the entire surah is written about the Battle of Badr. So we want to measure the entire idea, not just what sentences occur. When I do this work, I find that I get a different result. I find that the most violent of all is the Quran, the Sirah, and the Hadith. The Old Testament is violent, yes, but the New Testament, I find no political violence in it at all. My measurement shows that there is no political violence in the New Testament. There's 34,000 words devoted to the Old Testament and 328,000 words in the Quran, the Sirah, and the Hadith. So I measure political violence. Now, by the way, there's one more difference here. Most of the violence in the Old Testament is historical in nature. It describes tribal violence, it describes invasion, but these are history lessons. They are not prescriptive. The bad thing about the violence in Islam is it is prescriptive. Indeed, there are parts of it which say that this violence is to go on until every human being says there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. Now, you'll notice there's another peculiar thing about my measurement of the violence, which is this. My violence measures what you read in the morning news. If you get up in the morning and see that Muslims have committed violence, are you surprised or shocked? Notice that it's never Methodist or Mennonites. So my analysis agrees with the morning news, whereas this other multicultural statistical analysis is at variance with the morning news. Thank you much.